Have you noticed your phone screen feels a little harsher at night than it used to? Reading small print takes a beat longer than it should. Driving after dark isn't quite as easy as it once was. That's not something to just quietly live with, and it's not only about getting older. Research into aging eyes has been pointing at something specific for years now, and it comes from a fruit almost nobody thinks about when they think about eye health. This is for anyone over 60 who wants sharp, comfortable vision for years to come, not only people already dealing with a diagnosed eye problem. If you've caught yourself squinting at a text message you could read easily 5 years ago, or rubbing tired eyes after a long evening with the TV on, this is already about you. You don't need a diagnosis to care about this. You just need eyes you're planning on using for a long time. Picture an ordinary evening. A couple of hours of reading, or scrolling, or watching television, and the eyes start to feel heavy, not painful exactly, just tired in a way they didn't used to get tired. A few blinks, a look away, and it's easy to tell yourself it's nothing. But underneath that small daily tiredness is something worth paying attention to. Eyes, like everything else in the body, are shaped by age-related wear, and by the time discomfort becomes hard to ignore, a lot of that wear has usually been building quietly for years already. The food researchers keep circling back to is the black currant, a small, almost black berry more familiar from jams and cordials than fruit bowls. It isn't even the vitamin C everyone assumes is the main story here. There's another compound inside black currants, the one responsible for that deep, dark color, that scientists have been specifically studying in connection with the eyes, and the way it appears to work has genuinely surprised more than one research team. Here's a strange detail that explains a lot. In the United States, black currants were actually illegal to grow for most of the 20th century, not because of anything wrong with the fruit, but because the plants can carry a fungus that's harmful to certain pine trees, so an entire timber industry got prioritized over a berry most Americans had never even tasted. The ban has been lifted in most states for years now, but the fruit never really reclaimed its place on grocery shelves. Which is probably the real reason you've never given it a second thought, not because the research behind it is thin, but because the fruit quietly disappeared from the average store for generations. Start with the color itself. That deep, almost black shade comes from a group of plant compounds called anthocyanins, and black currants have some of the highest concentrations found in any common fruit. Anthocyanins are antioxidants, a word used so often it started to lose meaning, so here's the simple version. As the body ages, cells are constantly exposed to oxidative stress, a kind of wear and tear caused by unstable molecules damaging healthy tissue over time. The eyes are especially exposed to this, partly because they're constantly processing light. Research suggests antioxidant-rich compounds like anthocyanins may help the body manage some of that wear, though scientists are careful to describe this as support, not protection. Nobody credible is claiming a berry cancels out decades of sun exposure or screen time. Still, giving the body more tools to manage that wear over time is rarely a bad idea. Quick question. When's the last time you actually thought about what you were feeding your eyes specifically, instead of just your body in general? Most people never do, which is a big part of why this fruit tends to fly under the radar. Second point, and it's a number worth remembering. Gram for gram, black currants contain roughly 3 to 4 times more vitamin C than oranges, the fruit most of us grew up thinking was the gold standard. That matters here for a specific reason. Vitamin C plays a role in maintaining collagen, and collagen shows up in the structure of blood vessels, including the tiny ones that supply the eyes. Well-nourished blood vessels are relevant to healthy circulation everywhere in the body, eyes included. Interestingly, the fluid inside the eye itself naturally holds one of the highest concentrations of vitamin C found anywhere in the body, which is part of why researchers keep circling back to this specific nutrient when they study the eyes, rather than treating it as just a general immune support vitamin. This isn't about replacing oranges or anything else you already eat. It's simply that black currants happen to concentrate an unusual amount of this one nutrient into a small serving, and nutritionists tend to describe that kind of density as genuinely useful, mostly because so few people eat enough varied produce to begin with. And a fruit that packs more into less is a practical way to help close that gap. Here's the part that tends to get people's attention. Because fresh black currants aren't easy to find in a lot of grocery stores, most of the actual research has used concentrated forms instead, juices, extracts, or freeze-dried powders, given to people who spend long hours in front of screens. Across a handful of these studies, researchers tracked things like eye fatigue, dryness, and blurred vision before and after regular intake, and reported meaningful improvements in how participants' eyes felt by the end of the study period, compared with those given a placebo. That's not nothing. It doesn't mean a spoonful of jam undoes 8 hours of screen time. But it does suggest something in this fruit is doing more than sitting there being colorful. It's interacting with how the eyes cope with strain, in ways researchers are still working to fully explain. Remember that surprising reason from earlier, the one that made researchers pay closer attention in the first place? Here's part of it. The studies that found the clearest results weren't even about vision quality in the way you might expect. They were about how fast people's eyes adjusted between light and dark, like walking from a bright store into a dim parking lot at night. And for anyone over 60, that specific skill, adjusting quickly in low light, tends to fade faster than most people realize, often long before anything shows up on a standard eye chart. That's where the research gets specifically interesting for an older audience. Some of the same anthocyanin compounds found in black currants have been studied for their relationship to blood flow around the eyes, the idea being that healthy circulation in that area supports how well eye tissue gets oxygen and nutrients, and how efficiently waste gets cleared away. Healthy circulation tends to matter more, not less, as the body ages. None of this means black currants treat any specific eye condition. That's not how food works, and anyone telling you otherwise is oversimplifying real science to sell you something. What the research does suggest is more modest, and honestly more believable, that a compound naturally found in this fruit appears to support systems in the eye that are already working to keep things running smoothly, the same systems that tend to slow down with age. It's also worth being honest about where black currants fit into the bigger picture, because no single food does all the work alone. Eye researchers talk about a handful of nutrients together: vitamin C, vitamin E, zinc, and pigments called lutein and zeaxanthin, which are found mostly in leafy greens and eggs rather than in black currants specifically. Black currants aren't trying to replace any of that. Think of it less like a single hero ingredient and more like one strong player joining a team that already includes things like spinach, salmon, and walnuts. People who eat this way consistently, a varied, colorful diet with black currants as one regular piece of it, tend to be the ones researchers point to when they talk about long-term eye health, far more than anyone eating one superfood in isolation and calling it done. That's really the honest version of this story, even if it's less exciting than a single miracle answer. Now, the obvious objection: fresh black currants aren't sitting in every grocery store, especially outside Europe. That's fair, and it's worth addressing directly instead of pretending it isn't true. The practical workaround most people use is dried black currants, unsweetened black currant juice, or frozen berries, all of which are increasingly easy to find online or in health food stores, and which hold on to most of the same compounds as the fresh fruit. A small daily serving, a spoonful of dried berries in oatmeal, or a splash of juice in water, is generally enough to be consistent with what's used in the research, without needing to build an entire diet around one ingredient. Consistency seems to matter more than quantity here. Occasional binges of any food are unlikely to do much, but small daily habits, kept up over months and years, are where nutrition research tends to show its clearest patterns. One more honest note, especially for this audience: if you're managing an eye condition already, or you're on regular medication, this video isn't a reason to change anything on your own. Food-based changes like adding a fruit to your diet are generally low risk for most people, but generally isn't the same as always, and a 2-minute mention to your doctor or pharmacist costs nothing. This isn't about fear, it's simply about staying consistent and safe for the long term. If there's one thing worth remembering after this video ends, it's this: the eyes are one of the few parts of the body most people never think to feed on purpose. There's usually a diet in mind for the heart, for weight, sometimes even for the brain, and the eyes just quietly get whatever's left over. That's the point that gets missed most often, and it's a simple one. Black currants aren't a cure, a treatment, or a replacement for regular eye exams. Nothing in this video should be read that way. What they appear to be, based on a growing body of research, is a genuinely useful addition to a diet that's paying attention to the eyes specifically, in a way most diets simply never do. That distinction, feeding the eyes on purpose instead of by accident, is really the whole idea behind everything you just heard. If this changed how you think about even one small daily habit, that's genuinely worth a subscribe. This channel is going to keep digging into foods like this one, the kind that don't get much attention but have real research behind them, especially for anyone focused on aging well instead of just aging. Before you go, here's an easy one for the comments. Had you ever heard of black currants before this video, or is this the first time the names come up for you? Genuinely curious how many people already knew. And if today was about the eyes, next time we're going somewhere most people never think to look either, a part of the body that quietly affects balance, energy, and focus, and almost nobody connects to diet at all. So here's the short version. A small, deep purple berry most people overlook happens to be unusually rich in the exact kind of compounds researchers associate with supporting the eyes as they age, not fixing them, not replacing a doctor, just quietly giving them something to work with. Eyes don't usually ask for attention until they're struggling to get it. Give them a little now, on purpose, consistently, over years instead of days, and that's really the whole idea. Small, unglamorous, easy to forget about, and, as it turns out, backed by more research than almost anyone expects.